Boo. How's everybody doing tonight? Nice to see everybody in chat. Crabnuts, good to see you here tonight. I'm always a little bit worried. It stresses me when you're not here, so thanks for being here. We have yet another live Q&A with Mr. Hubert and myself. We are going to continue going through the list of compiled questions from streams of yesterday, and it will also take time to answer some if they come up tonight as well. Keep in mind these are good ways of getting questions about the industry. If you have general questions about animation in general, like you want some advice on what to do next, where to go to learn, should I stay in school, should I try to get my first job, like these are good times to do that. But also it's a good time to also ask if you got questions about Agora.Community. You're curious about a feature that I talked about a while ago that's not there yet. Don't know how to do something Agora.Community that you'd like to know how to do. Like it's general. These questions we will, as I promised, eventually start making some themes that we'll announce well ahead in advance, where we'll bring a special guest on, where they will be specializing in some areas, so you can bring your specialized questions to those streams as well. So, but for tonight, you're going to have to endure the general perspective of someone like myself and David Hubert. I like to think we should be able to entertain nonetheless. So, Mr. Hubert, hello, how are you?
Hey, Brent.
Hey.
What's up, man?
Was that?
That was a great introduction.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thank you. I was practicing it in the mirror earlier. I'm glad it went well. Yeah.
It shows. It's getting better every week.
Perfect. That's
Keep
good.
at it.
It's better to go. It's going in the right direction, I guess, which is better than the.
Lower the expectation from the start, and then you can only improve over time, right?
That's it, right? Just totally. That's it. And I think I did a good job of that. I think on a couple of those earlier streams when like nothing worked. So things are working a little bit now, which is nice. Okay, so I guess we should. I mean, I don't know. I think what we did last time was awesome. We kind of just sort of naturally ended up pulling, back and forth. We had like a question from the stream. We took a question from the backlog. We just kind of bounced around until we ran out of the hour, which happened quick. So I guess we should jump on it right away because.
I would say, and maybe something that would, if we go one question from the chat and one from the backlog, maybe we can, because something I saw a lot of question last time. I was like, oh, I hope that I'll remember this one, and then it just go way down and you won't see it. So maybe we'll start with chat. And then after that, we'll go on the backlog. And then after that, when we go back to chat, we're like, okay, now is the time.
That's a good idea. Because otherwise we'll end up like adding more questions to the backlog during the stream where we're supposed to be taking care of the backlog, which kind of defeats the purpose. I like that. Okay, sure. So we got a question right up here up the top. Do you want to take it?
All right. Let's see. I see two right here.
There's
okay. I'll go with the quick one. I'll go with the quick one right there. How important is it to have a quadruped on an animation reel from Joshua MCK Anim? That's an interesting question.
It is.
I would say for me, and Brent, we've both did creature, some quadruped animation in the past, so I'm sure we both have opinions on this. For me, a show reel should do many things, but it should definitely be tailored of what you aspire to be doing in the industry. If you are looking forward to become someone that might be specialized in creature animation or VFX or animals, all of the above, having quadruped animation in your show reel is a no-brainer. That's going to open a lot of doors and I would even say maybe a few quadruped animation as well. So by and large, it is not mandatory at all to have it in your showreel. But if you aspire to do creature animation and VFX and all that, it would be a really, really, really good idea to have it in there. That's for sure. And I would say as well, it kind of show, because even in humanoid character animation, you can have more realistic, very stylized. So you have a range. But as soon as you go into creature with quadruped or wings or tentacles and all that, it kind of show a different side. So I would say it kind of send the information that not only are you really interested with this kind of stuff, creature animation, but on top of that, you are ready to do the extra effort to learn about the locomotion, the body mechanics, and everything that went through the learning before you were able to provide a good piece of content for your showreel.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because when your demo reel is it's funny. I feel like the one thing that students, or not even students, just even like, it's amazing how I've seen people that have been animating for 10 years still struggle to really understand what to put on their demo reel. For me, it's always been kind of straightforward, because it's always been like, I know what I'm trying to get. And so that I put the things on there that I feel will help me get there. And then the question is simply, what can I put on that reel that will communicate what I need the person who's going to look at it needs to know? It might be a little easier for me, because as a director, I'm often in the position of looking at a person's reel, and so I can put myself in that person's shoes a little bit maybe easier than another person. But it really isn't too hard, because, like, for instance, I always gripe about this for game animation, where people who want to be a game animator, they just put the typical stuff on their reel. They just put, like, what the school told them to put on there. Like, they put a bunch of cycles, because apparently that's game animation. And it's like, it's the bar has been raised at this point to be way beyond that. And it's an opportunity for you to have like an unspoken conversation with the person who's going to look at it. If you could put things in there that says, hey, I get it, I understand what the job is, more so than the surface level, because I've actually done some homework, there's a chance to do that. So if you really start to dig deep and have some opportunities to talk to people do this job for a living, ask them, what kind of things are you usually doing? Like, what does your day-to-day look like? Do you need to work inside the engine? Do you what is going on? And also, what are the tricky things? Like, what are the things that are difficult? The things that the industry in general is aspiring to tackle? What are those challenges? Because if you're really ambitious, you could actually put a bunch of things in there that are sort of like almost in a way sort of indicating that you get that, and that you're almost working, you're spending time and energy trying to solve that problem almost on your own a little bit. Not to say that you can solve it on a technical level, but if you know that, like, touching surfaces in games during gameplay is like a big thing ever since Uncharted was doing it all the time, it's like, well, maybe you pick up on that, you try to put some examples of that somehow in your demo reel, just because it's a way of saying, hey, I get it, I've been playing games, I understand what's in there, I see what the leading edge companies are doing, and I just want to let you know that I'm paying attention, and I'm willing to be that one of those pioneers on your team. Quadruped is no different. It's like, if you want to work in VFX or you want to work on video games, you really stand out it's almost like a badge of honor when you get when you start animating quadrupeds, because now you're in a group that's a specialized group that not all animators are in. Some animators are just too terrified of quadrupeds, and honestly, they just don't ever really even go down that road. So by going down that road on your own with some confidence and putting the time in, obviously, so that doesn't, so you actually kind of know what you're doing, you are opening up more doors, like David said, 100%. But it's the same for anything. So quadrupeds is just an example. Game animation is an example. Whatever, you pick the things that you're genuinely interested in, you do a deep dive on it, you make sure you learn enough about it, you put it on a demo reel, and you're essentially saying, hey, I'm open for business, so hire me.
I would say another advice I could think on is I created the quadruped program at iAnimate. I think that must have been like 8-9 years ago. That was almost a decade ago, and it was at a time that it still is. There was a big need for a quadruped, proper education. But since then, there's a lot of other schools that are doing the same, and there's even online school that specialize. All this to say that having quadruped animation on your showreel 10 years ago was like, oh, wow. Nowadays, it's not as special as it used to be. And unfortunately, there's a lot of very beautifully animated but very realistic quadruped animation, that you know that someone literally copied a reference frame by frame. I'm not saying that this is easy. It's a challenge on its own. But I myself and some other recruiters or director that I know might be a little suspicious of, okay, you're able to match 1-for-1 a reference. But in production, it might be, okay, maybe you don't have a reference, or you have a reference, but it's a little bit of this one and a little bit of this one and a little bit of this one, and you have
usually
to frame those 5 seconds. Or it might be way more stylized than realistic, so you just need to take the reference for locomotion or body mechanic basic concept, but then after that you have to exaggerate. So I would highly advise to not just have a realistic quadruped shot with either the reference at the bottom or not, but you actually have something more. Is it something that is really pushed, really stylized, so it's not just copied frame by frame, or you have 2 different reference, one and you see in the 5 seconds in between keyframed animation, and you see that it's still beautifully and it kind of link it. You do something to show whoever is looking at the reel that this is not copied 100% from a reference. That's going to allow you to stand out now compared to 10 years ago, where just good quadruped animation was enough.
That's really good advice, because that's something I see a lot. I see a lot of that. And one really easy way to do that would be creature animation. So for instance, you use reference of some sort of base animal, but you then apply it to something like a dragon, for instance. And what you're doing there is you need to extrapolate from that, because you're obviously not going to make you're not going to have dragon reference. If you do, then you should be a millionaire, because if it's the real deal, then I want your dragon. But the point is that you will need to do a bunch of interpretation and a bunch of other things that will take some of that and sort of marry it with a completely different creature. And you're going to be putting a lot of your own work on top of it, because and maybe in that case, you're like quite literally looking at bird references and tiger references or bear references, whatever your actual like land-based dragon reference is. And then now you're not just saying, stitching, like putting a bridge between 2 things, which is already difficult for sure, but it's more like kind of grafting 2 things into one another and sort of somehow creating a new species out of almost doing some sort of DNA splicing with all the reference. So
I agree. That's a great example. If I see a quadruped dragon that I see it landing, then he's walking, and I see the little tiger reference, and then it starts to, and then I have an eagle reference, and then it stalls again, and I don't have any reference. I mean, instantly I'm like, wow, okay, this person knows how to select proper reference, how to adjust the weight with the character that they have. So right away I'm like, okay, I can trust that they will be able to do a good job in production, when you have to sometimes do Frankenstein reference, and then, oh shit, the director wants something else. Now he's going on the right side instead of the left side. Well, I don't have the perfect reference for that. Well, you're going to have to animate it.
Welcome to the circus. That's what it's like out there. No, that's a good question. That's a good one, because it is. I do agree too. It's like it used to be nothing, and now the market's a bit more crowded, but it's also luckily crowded by a bunch of people that are just like literally almost rotoscoping, or quite literally rotoscoping. So you still have a chance to put it out there, but put it out there in the right way. I have the same speech about motion capture stuff. If you put motion capture stuff on your reel, for the love of God, please make sure that you show before and after. Don't just put a bunch of stuff on your reel then put motion capture underneath, because no one has any idea what you did. How do I know that you didn't literally just get really good mocap data and then put it on a character and then maybe do a little bit of retargeting and then hit the render button? Like literally, that's not showing off at all. I need to see that you did something to it. So at least give me a before and after, and then give me a reason to be impressed, in other words, because otherwise it just makes me suspicious and it makes me question your own critical thinking skills, because if you can't put yourself in the shoes of the person looking at it, then you might not be very good on the production floor, because I need people that are doing the same kind of mental math where it's like, okay, so what does this shot really need? Or what does this gameplay mechanic really need? These are the kind of important questions you should do and ask yourself before you even animate something. So same thing for demo reels, which is another one of those layers of communication that are happening in a demo reel, right? If you put enough critical thinking and you present it in a way that makes sense and it's answering a lot of questions that person is going to be asking in their own head when they're watching it, then you're almost already hired. You know, you're going to probably get an interview, and now they're just going to the only way you're going to screw it up is if you really botch the interview and just act like an idiot. So just show up, be polite, and answer honestly the questions, and you probably got the job.
Yeah, the showreel is not everything, but it's still the main tool that you have to advertise yourself, to brand yourself. Yep. I mean, I still remember Cam Fielding showreel from what he did on Turok, like, I don't know, like 15 years ago. I saw it just maybe once or twice, and I still remember. So, and especially now that, you know, more and more studio are going with remote freelancing and all that, you don't just compete with your own village anymore. You compete with everyone else.
Exactly.
So if you're, and that's a double-edged sword. If you have a very average showreel that you didn't put enough thoughts into it, that's definitely going to affect the odds to land your dream job. But on the flip side, if you're smart about the showreel, if you are creative, if you go the extra mile to provide those reference and all of that, it can go a very long way. And then you end up yourself having, wow, I now have 4 different options. Which one do I choose? So it's always been, the showreel has always been, from the time that we're putting them on tape, it was still super important. It's still extremely important today. I think it's just even more so, because it's still, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of artists. There's no way that, you know, a recruiter or a director knows everyone. So he's still going to rely heavily on the showreel. And the showreel is what makes you go through the gate. And after that, it's recommendation, it's, you know, the interview and all that. But if you don't pass the showreel, and maybe a last piece of advice, just keep in mind that when a recruiter or a director is looking at your showreel, he's not just looking at your showreel. He's probably looking at 100 different showreel. So he doesn't want to spend a week looking at them. If you don't capture his attention within 10 seconds, you're probably already out. So I would say, no matter what build-up you want to put in your showreel to have the masterpiece of your shot, like at 48 seconds, and then it's just start super strong.
Absolutely.
Start strong, start with diversity, and that's going to be like, oh, okay, I'm interested to see all the rest. So yeah, put your best foot forward for sure.
Always. Okay, next question. I'm speaking of motion captures. I want to hear about motion capture. It's a good one. I'm interested in doing motion capture, acting, creature work in specific. Do you think that it could help me become a better animator, or is it going to be too taxing learning both of these things? So that's okay. So I'll take the first stab at this. So I think a lot of it depends on where you are currently in your learning curve. Like, are you just starting out, or are you already, do you have a couple years under your belt and you consider yourself junior? Like, I don't know where you are. I get the feeling you're just starting out, because the way, like, you seem to be talking about learning 2 things at the same time, but I don't know, because it could just be like creature work is maybe new, and I don't know. So one thing I will tell you for sure is to answer, because there's a couple questions in here. The question I will answer right now is, can motion capture make you a better animator? I would say absolutely yes. The same way that video reference makes you a better animator, motion capture, working with the data. So something I talk about every once in a while is the good old days, the golden era of animation, where we would work as assistants or even in-betweeners to an animator on a film, before we got a shot at being an animator on our own, and then maybe a supervising animator at some point. The idea was that we were quite literally, the animator on that shot were doing all of the key poses. The assistant animators were doing breakdowns, and the in-betweeners were doing the in-betweens. And so, as you can see, there is a small army of people that work under the animators. And as you go up the ladder, there's fewer of them, right? So like there's maybe a handful of animators, and there's quite a few assistants, and there's a army of in-betweeners. At least that's what it was like back in the 2D days. So you got a chance to work with these drawings, and just working with them and like learning from them and understanding and just absorbing it made you better, because it made you more, like, as long as you're actively observing as you're working with the stuff, which it's hard to do if you're animating with the stuff. I'd say the same thing with motion capture. If you're editing it and you're like modifying it and you're working with it all the time, you're going to start realizing things. Like, for instance, I still to this day will go back and look at motion capture data when I'm really trying to figure out something specific about the way a certain, like a limp works. You know, you could look at reference for sure, but reference is limited to the angle you get. You don't always have two angles. And so it's sometimes really hard to see for sure what's going on, where in motion capture, you have the world's best reference because you can slow it down, you could scrub it backwards, forwards, get as close as you want, as far as you want, look at from whatever angle. So as long as you're using like that, you can be,
and you can see the animation curves.
Yeah, exactly. That's huge. What you just said there, just selecting on like the hips and like show me the curves. And now you can see it like, oh man, wow. I had no idea. Like, cause sometimes your eye's not picking up on things on the reference, right? But what better way to measure something than in like quite literally world space on these plotted curves? So, oh my God, wow. The hips do thrust forward a little bit on the runs. Oh my God. It's like, you might not see that, especially if you're looking at like Rhino House reference or something, and they've stabilized the camera to the person, and it's not picking up on that, because it's maybe stabilizing based on the hips. And so the hips are never going to move relative to the camera. So your brain will never see it. And it's really hard to see that if you're watching someone run across the field. You're never going to see that. It's too microscopic. It gets hidden by the fact that they're displacing. How are you going to see small, like inches of fluctuation in speed over the course of someone traveling at 5 meters per second across? Like, no, you just won't. So yeah, but you will if you should take a look at the F curve, and then now suddenly you're like, wow, I just learned something huge. I do that all the time. I'm still discovering new things that I had no idea was a thing when I'm looking at motion capture footage. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe you want to take a crack at the other part of that question, Dave.
Yeah, the part of the question that I see is it too much to try to become good at both? And I don't think so. I think at some point you obviously have the choice of being in between a generalist that is able to do everything decently, or become super specialized, like you just do creature animation. But I would say most people are finding a balance in between, and I would say that motion capture and creature animation usually lend themselves into either VFX or video game. Yeah. So I'm not saying that if you animate creature, you will have to animate mocap, and if you animate mocap, you will have to animate creature. But those productions usually often have both of those things. So I would say that at least, even if it's two different, that both expertise are going to complement each other, but we can see them at two different expertise. Both of them are typically going to be in the same kind of production. So if you want to go towards video game, either it's gameplay cinematics or VFX, then you will definitely become an asset for a director that is looking for someone that's sometimes going to do that, sometimes going to be doing creature animation, but is not going to complain when he have to work with mocap and the other way around. So to me, it would come back to Brent's first question as what is your current level of experience and expertise? If you're starting, I would say start with one, get used to it, get good to it, and then eventually add the other. Whichever you want to start with, it's your own decision. I would say if you were stuck with only one, which one would it be? Then start with this one. I don't think that starting with one is going to give you a big advantage. But no, I don't think that it would be too taxing to learn these two things. Now, if you're already working 40 hours a week and you have a family and you want to take two online classes at the same time, one with creature and mocap, that's a terrible idea. Don't do it. But just in general, focusing to push those two different expertise, I think it's a great idea.
Now there's a subtle nuance to the first part of this question too that I wanted to touch on. You're saying specifically, you're saying I'm interested in doing motion capture acting, creature work in specific. So right off the bat, and then you go on to say, do you think that will make me a better animator? So I mean, so it sounds like what you're saying is you'd like to get in a suit and actually do the performing as well. But I'm making the assumption that you would then be working with the data possibly, because that would definitely help you be a better animator. But if that's not, if the question is more just performing physically in a suit, is that going to make you a better animator? I would also say yes, because I think that just like taking acting classes is a good idea for an animator. Someone who's getting out there and becoming comfortable with their body and learning how to perform with their body. Performance is performance, whether you're doing that through animation, whether you're doing it with your own physical body, whether you're doing it with puppets. It's performance. It's entertaining, and it's about movement and timing and all these important things. So no matter what, you could, all these things all work on this very similar frequency in our minds. So you're always going to be getting advantages, in other areas when you focus on one of those frequencies specifically. Yeah. So
with everything that I work with, there was always a few animators that were shooting a lot of reference for the other animators. So if we're touching just acting in general, not even thinking about mocap, being able to be comfortable to shoot reference in front of other people, whether it's reference for you or for others, it's another another asset that you can bring. So I would say that's another thing in a show reel. If you have a shot and you show your own reference and it's actually a pretty good acting, that's another thing that a recruiter or director might say, oh, on top of that, if we need animators that are not comfortable shooting reference, he can also do that. So that would be another asset for sure.
Yep. One last little point here. It's also interesting that you're saying creature specific. Motion capture and creature don't usually go well hand in hand unless you are actually motion capturing like an actual creature. Like if you can get not a creature, but like an animal, like a dog, horse, or something like that. But we usually defer to an actual animal when we're trying to capture something that looks real, like a real quadruped. That being said, there is room there to actually. I've always been really interested myself in trying to get more out of a performance. Like we get in a suit and we walk around on all four, but we're trying to take that data and then sort of graft that onto a creature in an interesting way. Who's to say that like my arms have to be arms? They could be forelegs, or who's to say that they can't be like the wings of a dragon? Like once you have motion, you could repurpose it in a lot of really interesting ways if you know how to do that in something like Motion Builder. So it's there's lots of room there to be very experimental. I don't see enough of that. I in my mind, I always refer to it as digital puppeteering. And obviously Jim Henson's workshop, they dabble a lot in this kind of stuff. Phil Tippett Studios, because that's a space that they work with a lot, like actually using a lot of animatronic stuff. And so there's kind of a weird sort of in between world there that they play around with motion capture. Next question.
Yeah, sure. I see another one here. I think that it might be a quick one to answer from Izerkakan. I hope that I'm pronouncing that right. Do you need connections, recommendation to get into the industry? No, you don't.
That's quick. That's a good one.
That's it. That's all I had to say for this one. It helps, but you don't need it.
Yeah, it's not necessary. I agree. I think really the demo reel is your calling card, and if you put that, if you can get that onto the right person's desk, and you don't need a connection to do that, because recruiters that's their job is to make sure that they're putting it on the right desk. So if you have something that catches their attention well enough that they can then be like, I think this is a good one, I think you really need to look at it, it'll end up on the director's desk, and hopefully you get a call. So some of it's the right place at the right time for sure, and some of it can help if you have an inside scoop, but it's certainly no, it's absolutely not a necessity. It's a nice to have.
Yeah, it might speed up the process or not. I would say once you're in the industry, especially when you are fresh out of school, try to get a good reputation. Be kind with people around you. Provide good work. Follow direction. Be a sponge. Learn as much as you can. And this is how you're going to start to have if not a reputation, at least kind words about your work. And then recruiter will talk to each other, or supervisors or whatnot. But yeah, I would say it's a nice to have, but it's not the most important thing at all.
Agreed. This is a good one. I like this question. What differentiates an animation programmer from a gameplay programmer? Well, my friends, I think to try to not take too long with this question, basically, in some companies, they're the same thing, to be completely honest with you. If you're working at a bigger company, you may be blessed with the opportunity of working with both. If you are in a case like this, if there are both of them, the gameplay programmers are typically the ones working directly with the designers to build the features, so that the core mechanics, like the characters can do these things. The animation programmer is working on animation technology to help make the animation play better and work better with the features that are being asked, right? Because the more you understand gameplay animation, the more you realize it's not quite straightforward. It's not like just making a bunch of cycles and putting it into the game. There's a lot of really big challenges, technically speaking, to make it play in a way that looks good. So especially when the gameplay features are very demanding, like, shooting games are always the worst for this, because the designers always want the character to be running around, changing direction while shooting and reloading in midair, and then also shooting the 360 degree. Like, they want to be able to do everything, because the player's going to want to do everything. Then trying to make that look good is really the bane of the animation department, and we can't do that on our own. We usually need technology to be developed to be able to bring it to the next level. For instance, if you know what motion matching is, we wouldn't have motion matching if it wasn't for animation programmers, because it's usually people that work in that very specific field of like body mechanics in a game engine and how we can adapt it in a really kind of interesting way in real time to be able to be more agile, but also not at the cost of looking like a steaming, dumpster fire. It usually requires technology. So gameplay programmers don't usually get their hands as dirty there. But if you're working in a small company, smaller companies are probably not working on proprietary engines though. So you already have probably some pretty decent technology to work with if you're working, say, like an Unreal or Unity. So you probably don't need a animation programmer as much if that's the case. But it all depends. So hopefully that answers the question. It's a tricky one to answer because that's a big topic.
There's another one here. It's pretty interesting from Ender Perez 16. With everybody getting access to this awesome information available about animation, how can I develop unique skills and quality to stand out from the rest? My first thought is don't be confused. 95% of the people will have access to the information and do nothing with it.
So true.
So that's the first thing. There's often the fear of missing out of, oh my God, everyone has it. Everyone is going to have amazing showreel. No, if you're actually use this information to good use, you are part of the 5% that actually properly used it. So that would be the first thing. I would also say that, we are in an industry that is booming. Video game is booming. Animated feature, VFX, VR is coming. AR is coming. Virtual universe, whether it's Facebook or Epic or others, that they're basically going to recreate the world all in CG, which means so there's not going to be a shortage of good job, at least for the next, I don't know, I don't want to predict the for many years. Let's not go into 20-30 years in the future, but at least the next decade for sure. So I wouldn't fear to having a hard time to stand out if you actually do good work. So how can I develop unique skills and quality to stand out from the rest? Just work hard on your craft, become better and better, compare your work with others, try to have good feedback from animators or other artists that you look up to in the industry. Try to be original. As I said, I mean, there's a lot of places out there where you can look at 100 showreel. Look at 100 showreel and you'll start to see the pattern of, oh, they're always doing this or this or this or this. Try to create something that's going to be original. If let's say I saw a showreel recently that the transition in between the animation that were in the showreel were presented by an animated character that was amazingly animated. I mean, just that. I remember the name. I remember the showreel. I ended up hiring that person for a couple of months. Why? Because it's standard out. The quality is important, but if on top of quality you're able to be original and stand out, and that's for you to figure out what that means. There are so many different ways to do it. It's not, no matter how much free information there is out there, it doesn't change anything to that.
Yeah, I will reemphasize a point that I made earlier, which is do your homework. Don't just do what you think you're supposed to put. It's amazing how many animators are on autopilot when it comes to demo reels, because they heard from somebody that you're supposed to put this stuff on your reel, so that's what they do, as opposed to no, don't take anyone's word for it. Do your homework. Find out, like, have an idea as to what you want to do, like what job are you applying to. You can even get to the point where if you really want to stand out, you could do a little homework on the company itself. Take a good look at the kind of work that they do, and then put a couple things on the reel that are fresh, that really right away is going to resonate with them. I know for a fact, and this is a true story. I used to teach for Ubisoft here in Montreal. They had a campus called I think they still do, but it changed a little bit. They called it UB Campus, and it was what they did was they worked alongside some community colleges here, and built these programs that were sponsored by Ubisoft, and Ubisoft even supplied some of their staff as instructors. And the idea was that it was going to give you hopefully a bit more, training that would be catered specifically to the needs of the video game industry. And obviously Ubisoft gains, they gain to benefit because it's almost like a farm school for them, that they know that the people that are in that school are getting exactly the training that they need to be able to hire these people. But also the students win because they don't have to go to Ubisoft. They can go anywhere with those skills. But I remember the day, I'll never forget the day I came in. It was a day that the recruiters from Ubisoft had come to do a little presentation. And I had to quite literally deprogram a bunch of them, because they were being told by recruiters that they absolutely do not put a bunch of sport animation on there, because Ubisoft doesn't make sport games really. And it's like, take a look, make sure that you're, take a look at our games like Assassin's Creed. We really like characters that are moving around with swords. And it's like, it does, you could go down that road if you're really trying to show off. You know what I mean? If you really want to, like, add a little wink to the actual company that you're applying to, you can. But the advice was generally bad, in my opinion, because who's to say that they absolutely want to work for Ubisoft? So that advice is really good when you know where you want to work. If you're not interested in doing that and you want to put a reel out to a bunch of different companies, then maybe at least get a basic idea as to, like I said before, spend a bit more time, try to interview somebody, try to have a conversation if you can with a gameplay animator that works in the industry, and then try to understand really what it is that they do every day, and then do that. And I keep saying, if you're going to try to get a job in games, absolutely learn a little bit about Unreal and or Unity, and then put some stuff on your reel that shows that you're actually already integrating some of your own animations. I'm telling you, I've been saying this for about 10 years, and I still don't see very much of this on demo reels. So just doing this one single thing for a game company, trying to get a job at a game company, will make you stand out. Like, you will be not the 5%, you will be like the 0.5%. It's ridiculous how few people are actually taking that extra effort to really do something that makes them stand out like that. So don't worry about it. Well, don't worry about it unless you're going to be like everybody else and not really put the work in, like David said.
All right, we have another one here from Pilar. Do employers do an in-depth social media research on you when considering you for a position? Some people speak out about controversial topics. Would that be a put-off? How mindful should we be about this? That's a very interesting question.
It is. It's funny too. Yeah. If Josh is in the background right now, he's probably really laughing hard. These two are both in my class, and this is such a Petter question. Petter, let me just tell you right now, you should probably just go ahead and delete all your social posts, because if you're that nervous about it, it means you probably have some controversial stuff going on in there. Just be proactive, just delete it. But of course, I will also remind you that everything on the internet lasts forever. So even after you delete it, it's probably still out there. Josh has probably already screenshotted all of your posts. So you're kind of in blackmail territory already. So good luck. But here's David's real answer, because it is a good question.
It is a good question. I mean, I've never done it. I don't have time to do it. I'm pretty sure there are some recruiters that are doing it. I cannot bring an average. I would say maybe 1 out of 4 people will take the time to look into it. It's funny because it's coming down to what, Brent, you said. If you're concerned about it.
Yeah, exactly. If you're concerned enough to ask the question, Petter, I'm just saying.
That answers the question right there. Just be a good person.
Yeah.
Be kind to others. Don't. I mean, you can have controversial thoughts, but there's a kind and respectful way to kind of, whether you're liberal or conservative, right, left, whatever it is, as long as it's not disrespectful and hateful.
I agree.
I wouldn't say just be this super bland with no personality. That doesn't make sense at all. But I would say if a recruiter would go and look for this kind of stuff, I can only imagine that it would only be put off if they find something that they would judge that this would not be appropriate in a working place. So yeah, I would say if you the way you interact on social media and all that should not be determined by are you going to be found out by recruiters. Just be respectful in general, and it'll be fine, no matter what are your views, whether you find them controversial or not.
It's full disclosure too, just to be fair. Petter is actually a pretty good dude. He just asked these very like cerebral questions. This is sort of his thing, so I get why you're asking it, and I think it also depends on where you live too, potentially. Like I know that some places have different social climates, and so maybe keep in mind you have to go a little out of your way. Like it's only people can really only see the public comments. So if you're going on Twitter and saying a bunch of like hateful stuff, then karma might come back and bite you in the ass. But if you're actually being respectful, like David said, and having a different point of view, but respectfully sort of trying to express that point of view, then if you are not getting hired by your company because of that, you don't want to work at that company. I'll tell you that right now. You know what I mean? Like sometimes things don't work out for good reasons and it might bum you out. But then at the end of the day, if you would have got a job at a company that was so completely like different culturally in your mind, you would have hated it there. Like if they don't tolerate different points of view, that's not a place I want to work personally. So, easier. I guess maybe that's easy for me to say because I have a job, but I don't know. What's next?
There's another one that was just above it from Dinkin Flicka, I think. Dinkin Flicka. Can you share some tips or advice to prepare for an interview after successfully taking the initial test? I'm going to rely on my own experience for this one. I don't know, it's a boring answer, but I've never prepared for an interview, like ever. I might have been interested a little bit in the studio. I looked maybe a little bit at the website, what kind of production that they were doing, but I was not doing it because of the interview. It was just because I was genuinely interested of, okay, if I want to go work there, what kind of place it is. But it kind of touched a little bit to a question that we had, I think it was last week, Brent, that it was, if should you be expecting like a question with a, was it phrased? With a second meaning, or they're asking this question, but it's actually a trick question. They are looking if you're going to fall into the trap. Don't just clear your mind and just be genuine. Trick questions. Just be genuine, be yourself, answer genuinely what they're asking. If they're asking you, how do you see your future? Don't answer that you see your future in that studio because you think that this is what they want to hear. Just be truthful with it. If that's the case, well, just share it. If you're looking, well, I'd really like to come here to have that experience because my dream job is at, Disney or whatever, and I feel that here I could, really grow as an artist and eventually maybe have a chance to go there. Whatever is genuine and is the reality, just go with that. So, I don't know if there's any specific preparation that you should do before an interview other than just being, do basic research about the studio, the project that is there, so you're not completely clueless when they ask you about that. But for the rest, don't try to prepare, if they ask me for this question, I'm going to answer this or this or that. No, just go in there and improvise at the best of your skills and be genuine and truthful in what you're answering.
I have nothing new to add there, to be honest. I think you just have to, like, because you don't want it to feel scripted. You should just go in and be yourself. I mean, that might be stressful for you, because like you just might be like, you just want to do such a good job at this interview. And I think the best way of doing the job is just because you're not gonna, by preparing, you're not gonna suddenly like cram in a bunch of like perfect answers to questions. I think generally speaking, people are not trying to trick you into anything, usually. And again, I think that if they are trying to trick you, then I don't know if I really want to work there either. Like, it's like, I want to have an honest conversation with somebody when I'm actually being interviewed. I don't want some sort of weird gauntlet of like, well, you didn't quite answer all of our tricky questions, so you don't get the job. Good. See you later. I don't want your job. There's this too here though, a follow-up question, which I think is interesting, because this concept of test you brought up in the previous question. So this whole idea of tests, and I think this is really interesting too, because I've also noticed this. What do you think about animation tests at the point of getting hired? Why do you think game devs, or why does game dev have more emphasis on the anim test compared to film? I have no idea how to answer that second question, but it is a thing. It's always been a thing. It's less of a thing now, I find. I haven't been asked I guess because I'm usually I'm usually applying as an animation director to a job, so they don't ask directors to do tests. At that point, it's pretty much word of mouth that you're going to get that job offer, and a good interview is usually how it goes. But yeah, I mean, I personally have not asked a person to do a test in a really long time for getting a job. I think that the only time that I've seen tests used lately is if it's very specific. Like, we're really worried there's a special skill, like quadruped, for instance. Maybe we're looking for quadrupeds animators or creature animators for a game, and we know that not everyone has great stuff on their reel, but maybe we'd be willing to also offer, like, if you want to do something new, you don't have anything on your reel that shows that, then maybe here's an example of something you could do as a test that would show us that you have the skills. So that can happen. Yeah, but the tests, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the tests. I think that I don't like the idea of ever asking anybody to do anything for free for one.
That's the same thing for me. I've never thought of asking for a test or been comfortable for it, and I've never been asked to do a test before going to a studio. So the first time that I heard about test that was in big video game studio, I was a bit surprised by it. I never felt comfortable because this is actually asking for free work. You already have a show reel. I understand why, because no matter the quality of your show reel, or even a show reel not from students, but even from your past work, sometimes if you have an amazing supervisor that basically hold your hands and redraw every pose and all that, yes, you can have a pretty solid show reel, but without that specific supervisor. So I understand why asking for the test, even if I've never been comfortable myself. So for asking for it, at the end of the day, if the studio wants a test and you're more than willing to do the test, just do the test. That's it. If you're like, oh no, I don't like this, it's like free labor, just don't do it and go over there.
Yeah, because not all companies are asking for it. That's for sure. I think
most don't. Most don't.
Yeah, it used to be a big thing, and I think one of the reasons for that was there was a big fear that people that didn't have any animation or game animation experience would apply for the job. And they just, because does everyone know how to make a proper cycle, or there's a certain way to animate like for games, and not everyone like typically learns this. You can go to animation school and not learn any of that very easily. I know that I went to the animation school, didn't learn any of that. I had to learn that on my first game job. And so I think that now there's enough people out there that kind of know more about that, but it would be weird for me to like ask for the test to just like, here, just make this animation of a character jumping and rolling. It's like, which is funny because I would never ask you to do that anyways, unless you're working on a cinematic for a game. Usually that would be broken up into multiple animations in some way. And the only way for me to really understand whether that would work and would be good is if I had it integrated into the game and I could see it played, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, nice job. But if it's just a bunch of animation, then like that doesn't really prove anything to me. So it could be just lazy recruiting too, because it's like, they don't really know what they're looking for, so they just ask for something that they would ask you for the game, and then if that passes the director's sort of quality test, you get the job. I mean, it could be that, which I'd be questioning seriously whether I want that job. But
yeah, since we're on the test, there's another question from player Pawn 0. Do technical animators get more tests because it's technical? I have no idea, but I can relate, and maybe Brent, you have a better perspective than I have. I know that when I was at in video game, programmers definitely had to do more tests than any artist. So, Brent, what is your perspective on that? Is it because, you know, as an artist, you have a show reel, so you can kind of showcase what you can do, and as a programmer, it's more difficult? You have your, you know, your LinkedIn profile, you have how you sell yourself. So do you have any insight of why programmers would most of the time have to do a test?
Yeah, I have a couple ideas here. I'm trying to find the question so I can put it up. I thought it was this one, but it's not. Where is it? Where's it down lower?
It's down. Yeah, it got a little bit down. It was from Player Pun.
It was Player Pun. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me look. I just wanted to make sure that, because if someone joins, they won't know what the hell we're talking about. It's nice.
But we can answer this one after. It's a good one as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So I'm not answering this question, but I can answer. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not answering the questions on the screen. I'm going to answer the question that we just asked. So the reason why, the big reason why that programmers get tested is because it's the only really way of knowing. Because programmers, the quality of a good programmer is the way they think. It's the way that they structure their approach to solving the problem in an elegant way that will give stable, reliable results. And the only way to do that is to be like, is to ask them, like, what would you do if you needed to do this? How would you build that class? Oh, okay. Well, first of all, it's a way of getting directly to the heart of, like, how does this person think? It's not as easy. They don't have a demo reel, right? Like programmers, because here's the thing, you know, programmers could be like, hey, look at all these programs that I made, and then you use them. You don't know if they're like maybe it's spaghetti code and it's held together with duct tape and toothpicks, and you wouldn't know because somehow they managed to squeak it out. And, you know, unless you play it long enough or use it long enough, you wouldn't know that it crashes all the time. So the best way is to look at someone's actual code, which is the same thing as, like, if I were to ask an animator to, like, okay, cool, that's a great looking demo reel, show me your Maya scene. And then a lot of you would be like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. And you'd show it to me, because here's the thing. Animators, like, making animation productions are not a solo sport. It's a team sport. And so animators sometimes have to adopt another person's work. Sometimes. Doesn't happen all the time. And it's usually terrifying when we do. Trust me. It's like the things that people do inside their Maya scenes are, some things should not be, some things I can't unsee. But for programmers, it's way more important, because they're always using other people's code, because people will be building these base classes and then reusing them and reintegrating them. And it ends up like spreading like a virus everywhere. And so if that stuff isn't well written and isn't well thought out, it becomes a big problem. So that's why. So to answer the question about the technical animator, why they might get tested, it's because it's similar. And we do kind of have a test in a way. David and I actually have our own little thing. He may not even be really fully aware of it. When we're talking about technical animators, what ends up happening is we need to have a special conversation. And it's usually myself and another person who will remain unnamed, because he's our special secret weapon. And usually I tag team it. It's like myself and this other person. We have a conversation with this person, because within 5 minutes we know right away. It's the way this person thinks. It's the kind of things that they do. Like, we could be like, so have you ever dabbled with the, you know, this and that? Oh yeah, I did that the other day, but I really struggle with it because I find this is a better way of doing that. And it's like, okay, big check mark. It's like right away, we want to get inside your head, because some people call themselves a technical animator because they opened up my Unreal once. It's like, nope. You need there's a certain level of knowledge that's pretty quickly revealed in a semi-technical conversation. So if you ever get invited to one of those, hey, do you have a minute? Like, you've already had your first interview, but then you get invited to another follow-up interview with a technical animator, be prepared to answer some technical questions. And if you're not going for a technical animator job, that's fine. They're probably doing that because you're probably going to be asked to work directly alongside someone like this. And they want to know whether you're comfortable at least a little bit, or maybe comfortable at least learning a bit more about the engine, because the job might require it. And that's why the technical animator is going to be on that call.
I think it's a perfect segue to answer the question that you actually put at the bottom. What is the difference between a technical animator and a regular animator? You probably have even more insights than I have on this side, but I would say usually technical animator are by and large people that started by being animator, if not professionally, at least at school. They thought that they were going to be an animator. Probably they have a little bit of professional experience as well, but they were so technical, and it's almost like they were more like an engineer type, more an engineer than a creator or an artist. So for them, rigging came easy. Scripting their own tool came easy. Troubleshooting other animators became easy. Opening a game engine and integrate animation became easy. So they kind of evolved into their own thing that lives in between the very technical-minded people with programmers on one side of the extreme and creative. So they are kind of speaking both language, and yeah, they are just two completely different. They might be able to animate, but for the most part, they're not animating. They're either creating the framework of what animators are using, not just the software, but the tools, the pipeline, and all that. And if we're talking more about video game, this is when they will dive deep in the engine itself.
Yeah, so technical animators. So one thing to be clear is there's a lot of companies that still call the riggers technical animators. That's changing now. I think that riggers are now calling themselves riggers because it didn't make any sense, and there was a collision because the role of a technical animators are becoming more and more popular on productions. I think that it really, they are engineers. Engineers in general, no matter whether you're a software engineer, a mechanical, electrical engineer, they're problem solvers. Engineers are always they live in this space between creativity, because problem solving is creative, and the technical skills necessary to solve that actual problem. So engineers that learn how to use a new language like C++, we call those people, and they usually go to school for quite a while because there's a lot to learn there. It's like mastering a whole other new language while also mastering a way of thinking and logically. They end up going, getting a bachelor's degree, usually at a university, to get that in computer science, or more specifically, computer engineering. So I think technical animators are really just cut from the same cloth. It's just that they didn't know that they were engineers. They thought they were animators, and they started their career like that. They went to school, but they always, like David said, usually it's it's usually easy to spot those people because they're the ones solving all the other person's problems. They know how to use Maya and how to debug all the problems. It's like they're like, they're Maya whisperers. They understand for whatever reason, just because they have an intuition of how these systems work, and they get into scripting. That's the gateway drug for sure into all the other things. And they're interested, and they just keep going down that road. They might get more into rigging. But the specific type of technical animator on game productions these days are the ones that are just inside the engine doing all this. So it's like where just like you might be a Maya whisperer, these technical animators are Unreal whisperers with specific regards to the animation systems. So an animation an animation programmer will be building the feature sets inside the engine that technical animators would then probably utilize, and then the animators are supplying the animation data that gets brought into and then used in these systems. So they're the ones building the state machines. They're the ones setting up blend trees. They're the ones setting up the IK systems, and who knows? It depends on their comfort level. I know some that are even doing some more gameplay actual work, where they're even building gameplay systems and blueprinting, because there's often a very blurry line between animation work and gameplay work inside of some very character-based video games. Yeah.
I would say for all the technical animators this evening out there, the future is bright for you, because there's such a big need right now in the industry. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, the recruiters see you as essentially unicorns. You're very difficult to find because it is a relatively new but rapidly growing area in production, and becoming more and more important for productions that want to have a smaller footprint, both in budget and size of team, because technical animators are now able to do a lot of the things that usually programmers were doing on these jobs, and programmers usually command a much bigger salary than an artist on a team. And so teams are kind of hoping that they don't need an army of programmers to do some mundane tasks like animation integration. So if a technical animator can do that, and I'm not saying that suddenly a technical animator is going to get paid like nothing. They do get paid quite a bit more than a lot of animators because they're unicorns, and the market is so demanding right now. So going back to what David said, your future is bright. You're going to have job security, and you're going to be paid well for that knowledge. So anybody who's at all technically leaning, that loves the idea of game animation and likes the idea of working inside of game engines, keep it up, my friends, because we're looking for you.
I would say if you were on a team and your character rig didn't have IKFK switch and everyone was struggling, the purebred artistic animator was going frame by frame in IK to make it work, and you just created a tool to do the IKFK and you distributed that tool to everyone, and everyone was like your biggest fan all of a sudden, it might be a sign that you might have a little bit of the breed of a technical animator.
If you heard about Unreal 5, the early release of Unreal 5, and you've already downloaded it and you've already tinkered and made a bunch of different things, and you've already reverse engineered the demo project that's inside there, you're probably a technical animator, especially if you also think you're if you think you're an animator but you're doing those things, you're a technical animator. That's what you are. Congratulations. Go get a job.
You already did your little mini game in Unreal.
Yep.
You might be one.
So somebody else and myself had this big plan. This was back actually at and David he knew about this. He thought it was funny. We were looking for these unicorns, and one of the ways that we thought about we concocted a plan to find them is we're like, hey, why don't we go on Twitch and look for people with the keyword Unreal and just watch them tinkering around in there, and right away it will reveal itself, obviously, for sure, because they're building character-based systems inside the game and they're doing it on their own. They're building their own game project. Guess what? They're a technical animator. They might not know that. That's what they're called. But we will be there to tell them that that's what they are, so they can discover themselves for the first time. And of course, they will be so gracious that they will accept our job offer. That was our crazy plan. It didn't quite work as easily as that, but it is kind of funny because it is kind of a way to. Sometimes people don't even know. They don't know that's what they are, and so they're not actually marketing themselves like that. And so we had to go find these people. So. Yeah.
It's been already an hour, Brent.
It has been, and it's funny, we didn't even get through. We didn't even touch the backlog.
No, I know. Just chat alone was enough to.
I know.
With plenty of good questions. That's great.
Yeah, it is good. So it's a sign of lots of good questions. So I'm gonna try to go recapture these ones after the stream tonight, because I can go back into the Twitch stream, because most of the questions I can see are from Twitch. There's, I think I saw one or two that weren't Twitch based, so it'd be very easy for me to go grab them. I don't see any of them that are not from Twitch, so that's going to be very easy, because the Twitch stream does actually record the actual chat, so I can go in there and grab them. And
but actually, if you go on Agora.Community, you can scroll down the chat.
Oh yeah,
right there as well.
That's a good point.
So I would say any question that we didn't have time to answer, just let's put it in the backlog, and hopefully at some point
maybe next time do so. So keep the questions coming. We'll see you on the next Q&A. We're doing this every week now. It's like you'll see it in the schedule. We're actually automating it. David and I are just committing to this. It may not always be both David and myself. Like I said, we will try to make a point of telling you when there's going to be a special themed one. It'll be we'll broadcast that on the social medias, so that you'll have lots of time to prepare for those special ones. But otherwise, at the very least, David and I will be here with open arms, waiting to answer any of the questions you're going to throw our way. Okay, so thanks for coming. Thank you, David, as always.
Thanks, Brian.
I will see you. Cheers, dude. I'll see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
All right, so I can get rid of this question now, huh? There it is. So see you on the next one. I guess I have nothing else to say. I already kind of stole my thunder. So we do have one thing to mention is we do have a live stream tomorrow, and it is with I really want to know how to say his last name, but I always forget it. I just, because I've never actually heard anyone say it, but it's Manny from CG Master Academy. He's going to be here. It's going to be a really good conversation about just online communities learning something like animation. But obviously the CG Society and the CG Master Academy goes well beyond animation, so it'll be a pretty big all-encompassing topic. But I'm excited about this one because I have lots of thoughts that I want to pick his brain on myself. So show up to that. It'll be tomorrow tomorrow at 3:00 p.m. Eastern Standard. So hopefully we'll see some of you at that. Talk to you guys soon. Cheers.